I don't know how much you guys know about changelog, but I feel like there's a couple things that might slip by you, and I want to just kind of give sort of a 20-minute overall on changelog, and then you talked about switching over to reporting in payroll. So then that's where my second subject will kind of land. And then again, if we have time, then I'm just open to anything that we might want to talk about. So does that sound like it makes sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Yep, sounds good.
I see we're recording.
Andrew?
Yes.
I just started the recording.
Good. Well, I like that. I don't know what I sound like recorded. I probably never want to hear it, but I hate to hear my own voice. Ugh, it's terrible. All right, so changelog. So changelog, the concept of changelog is that, when people change certain data records, whether it's employee record or fixed asset record, vendor record, etc., it might make sense to record that in a changelog so that if anybody gets mad and says, wait a second, what happened, you have your smoking gun to say who changed it. I see it as less trying to find people making mistakes, but more trying to help them with training purposes so that we learn from our boo-boos and it's clear what we did. Often in support land you hear about, well, I can't believe that happened and that caused us a problem. And then, of course, we use our changelog to kind of show that the person who's always the one that's complaining the most is the one who actually changed the data that caused the problem. It seems like that's just the rule of counting systems. I don't know. So changelog is a great feature to sort of protect you guys from, and the client, from changes that were just done in a way that weren't optimal, let's just put it that way. Changelog is something that I feel very strongly with what I call master file changes, and I'm going to kind of define that a little bit. But I tend not to see it be important in the concept of transactional database, transactional tables, payroll journal line, general journal line, purchase header, purchase line, requisition header, requisition line, some of those main tables. We got a lot of sort of audit trail going in when people process transactions. We know who created records. We know who posted records. It's all kind of contained in the data that's created when you post, and it's kind of self-determined. So I'm not sure. The reason I kind of hesitate with changelog in transactional places is that it will work. And the problem is it will work, and it will create one heck of a lot of data for you, and maybe just too much data for something that nobody's actually ever going to look at. Occasionally, I've seen people wanting to do it for direct unit cost on the purchase line table, table 39. You're still going to get a lot of traffic, but sometimes it's nice if somebody's updating that record and you didn't realize it. It's kind of a nice to have that. But that's kind of a questionable one on transactions. Generally speaking, transactions are off limit for changelog. It's more about master files. And so I just wanted to kind of put that out there. In terms of how you set up changelog, one of the things that you're going to have to know is the table, the table name you kind of can figure out in the table ID. So I just want to kind of just quickly demonstrate on any table, and let's just take fixed assets as a simple example. If I go to fixed assets and bring up the fixed asset card as an example, and there is no fixed asset card, so I think I'll actually switch to vendors just to make it simple since we don't have fixed assets implemented in this database. Okay, so when I'm on this screen or if I go to the card, wouldn't matter where I go, you always can go here, help, and about this page. So you always have that on every single page that you ever go to in this system. When you click on that button, you will always get down here in this source table, the fourth row down, the name of the table and the number. And you'll need that because when you get to the changelog, that's what you're turning on. You're turning on by 23 vendor. And so I'm going to demonstrate that, but I just want you to know that's important for you to know. So where that might apply in a deeper way may be actually in the bank account. We do ACH. You may be not doing ACH right now for vendors, but vendors do have ACH. And when you set up the ACH, their bank account information, you do it here. And so this is an example of a drop-down table, a child table to the 23 record that also may be very important to put under the change log, only because, again, this is where the banking information is, and again, it's exactly the kind of information that you may want to know about if somebody's mucking with, if you can think about that from an internal control perspective. So here, again, same thing. So there's the table, 288. So again, just simple, same process. Once you know that, then we can work backwards and set up our change log. So let's go ahead and do that now. So in the change log, where you go is you go to IT administration. Change log is underneath the auspices of IT administration. It's kind of considered to be more IT oriented than application setup. That's a decision that they decided, but it is what it is. So in here, there's two areas that we're going to go into. One is general, and the other one's going to be data deletion. I'll tell you later why we're interested in data deletion. But let's go to general right now. And in there, you have two sections that you want to focus on. One is change log itself, and the other one is the change log setup. Okay. One thing that I am not sure about, I saw this one just today, client object change log, and I'm not sure what that page does. I'll have to explore that a little bit more. I'm not sure it applies to us in our multi-tenant environment, so I have a feeling we're not going to be able to use what that is designed for. I would stay away from that for now. But change log is actually where you see the change log, the data that's actually going into the change log. This is where you're going to see that data. We're going to talk about that in a second in terms of how you filter for it and organize it and so forth. But we'll come back to that. But the next thing I want to do is just really show you how to set up the change log, and that's under the administrative section called change log setup. We've got some other people joining. Dan is on the phone as well. Brenda, hello Brenda, is on the phone, and a wireless caller is in who I don't know who that might be. That might be Ange. No, I don't know who that is.
Allie, maybe.
Yeah. Somebody's calling in on a wireless perspective, so I don't know who it is. Okay, so here on this screen, whoops, I just lost the screen. Let me just kind of bring it back up. There we go. Is just a simple checkbox. It's like, well, that seems too simple. Well, obviously it's not that simple. Change log activated is just a checkbox. Once you unclick it, the entire change log is turned off once the user logs off and logs on. One thing I've noticed just in general, and I don't know if this is applicable, but I believe it's applicable, is that any changes you do in the change log setup do not kick in until the user exits the application and gets back in. Okay, so that's just something to be aware of. But in here, there's an action, and this is where all the work is done, under tables. So it's not on the home button, but if you go to the actions, you'll see tables. And when you click on tables, you get a screen like this. Okay, this screen is giving you every single table number in the ID of number. You can actually, I'm sure, switch it to name, I'm assuming, and you could do it by name if you like. So it's your choice how you want to approach it. These numbers are not that relevant. I mean, the numbers, I can just give you a sense of the numbers. The numbers basically are smaller numbers. They're really coming from Microsoft directly, and the larger numbers towards the end are really going to be all K-12. Our range is in 3708, 5500 and above. So anyway, these are all the tables you have. It's a heck of a lot of tables. A lot of this has already been preset for you, but again, we have to just sort of think it through. One of the things that I will say important table is 5200, and let's just kind of go down. That's going to be employee. So I'm going to just page down, even though I can just type a filter. And I'm just going to wheel on down the road. The reason I want to bring them all together is because they're some of them are all together, employee qualification, employee relative. But this is not where the payroll tables are. They're in a different range. They're in a 37 million range. So it's kind of confusing in that way. I guess if we went ahead and sorted it by name, and maybe if we filtered by name and just said, give me anything that has the word employee in it, then that may be beneficial. You got a lot of tables here that you can sort of look at. So That's one way to look at it. So let's just talk about just one record first, which is the 5200 record. That's your employee master record. That's the same master record you get if you're on the HR screen or the payroll screen. It's just that same table. It's the master table. It has the name, the address, their default job, their class, their employee location, etc. You guys know that table probably very well at this point. Okay, so let's talk about each of these 6 columns. Okay, the first column, log insertions, just simply says, do you want me to track the fact that somebody created a new job, a new employee? The second one really relates to, do you want to track when people are just modifying an existing record? And the last one is, do you want to track if they're deleting a record? Okay. So you have sort of different ways to think about this. One thing to understand with insertions, with master records for the most part, and this doesn't necessarily apply all the time, but typically like on the employee record, when they put the ID in and hit enter, the defaults come in, but for the most part it's a blank record. So the reason probably some fields is on is because, well, we know all fields aren't going to be filled in yet. They're all going to get filled in mainly as they then modify the record and leave the screen. So the insertion really is more about what number got assigned, the fact that the person was the one who inserted it. The log modification then, typically we don't know which field we're interested in tracking, so we say all fields, and that's pretty typical. And on the deletion, again, we delete a record, who deleted the record and what is the primary ID of what record got deleted, maybe is why some fields make sense on deletion. One thing that I would caution you, though, is if you do want to record all the values of all the fields at the time of deletion, then you have to say all fields for that situation. So this one has some fields. And we're going to look at how we make these choices in a second. The last 3 options are very specialized, and they were added by K-12 Enterprise to the base system. We had some complaints over the years, primarily, and you guys might find this a little ironic, with the HR departments. HR people generally are not as sophisticated with software sometimes, or accounting systems, if you will, than payroll departments. So sometimes the HR department was changing data and didn't even realize they were changing data. They would just be on the phone, they'd be talking, they'd have the employee record in front of them and just accidentally change something. So the confirm modification really came into being to say, hey, if I've changed any data on this screen and I'm now closing the screen, closing the card, do you want to be basically warned that changes was detected? Do you want to confirm and make the change? And so a screen pops up and actually shows you what fields were even changed. You changed last name from X to Y, and you changed this from that. Do you want to confirm it? And if they say no, what the system does, quite honestly, is just abort it all, and it brings back the record as if nothing in that session had been updated. So if they change 17 fields and they abort, all 17 roll back, and it's to the state it was before they actually got into the record. That's the only thing that will happen on the, they can't say, oh no, I just want to throw out this field or that field or this field or that field. It's pretty much either accept all 17 fields got changed or accept none. It's the only choice you have with the confirm screen. Furthermore, in this confirm methodology, maybe the HR department wants to be warned, but the payroll department vehemently doesn't. They're going, no way. So the user filter and or the user group filter can be used to say who is in the scope of getting the confirm. So if the checkbox is checked, and let me just see if you guys have anything in here. Well, you're not using user group. User group is a field on the user card, and you could have HR for the 7 people in the HR department and just put HR here then. And as long as the payroll department doesn't have HR on their user setup screens, then they won't get the confirm message. Only the people that are in the HR department will get the confirm message. And now we've delivered and satisfied this requirement of just the HR department being warned of a change. So that's the purpose of what those 3 fields, and they really need to work together. In other words, you fill in these last 2 and don't check this, they're not relevant. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, Andrew, are those positive filters? In other words, if I leave them blank, does that then include everyone?
Yes. In other words, if I leave it blank right now, like right now, once I scroll to this record right here, so once, let me just kind of get rid of that. So right now, hold on, let me just see, what was that message? Yeah, okay, so right now, every single person that's using the employee screen. So let's actually test that. Let's leave the system. Let's close the screen, because remember I told you we have to close it. All right, I got to log back in, which I hate logging in. It's one of my least favorite activities. Does it know it's me? All right, so I'm back in the same database, just confirming that. I'm going to either screen, doesn't matter which one I go to. And I'm on a test database, so we shouldn't care. And I'm changing the middle name to an M, and I'm closing, and nothing seemed to happen. I don't know why. Let me see. Let me try that again. Yeah, it took it. I mean, I think they're modifying all fields, right? Let me see. Let's just do a change log entry here. Let's go navigate. Where do we see change log? Anybody see it anywhere? No, hold on.
Under.
Yeah, I changed the Pieser state too, in this little session. So there's the L, and the new value is M, right? So all that happened right then. Yeah, I don't know why it didn't update me. Let me just try it one more time. Let's just change the zip code to 44871. And maybe you do have to put a user filter. Maybe you're right. Let's go ahead and change that. Let's go ahead and put users. Let's put K12 in a users group. Actually, I'll just go ahead and just simply say K12. So let me come back. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm glad you asked me this question. Let's go to change log setup, tables. I'm just going to type in on this one 5200 because I'm getting tired of having to go down there. Oh, look at that. Maybe I just accidentally didn't. So let's hit OK there. Let's just confirm that it went this time. No, something's going on. I don't know why. Let me just break my filter here. Yeah, something's going on because it's not saving the data, it looks like, which is the problem. Well, there's a confirm modification there, actually. Yeah, I don't know why, but notice that it's actually on the 23 record. Did you notice that? Let me see.
Mm-hmm. It was up close to the top.
Yeah, see, it's on the 23 record. So let me just try that and see what the experience is, and I'm going to have to look into why that's happening. So let's go vendor. All right, so we'll just change this to a 5. There you go. So there's the screen. Changes detected, confirmation required. Fields changed for record, and I give you the primary key, last modified date, the new, the zip code old. Do you want to complete? So if I say no, then you get an abort, and basically it just is all you could do is just disregard, basically. You can't get anywhere. You just can't get it in. If I say 5 and now close, I'd say yes. I don't know why it asked me twice. Let me try that again. Let me change this to a road. Yeah, okay. And there's road. Yeah, I don't know why I can't change 5200. So I'm just going to say change log 5200 modification or confirm screen. Just doesn't seem to be going. So I'll check into that. Maybe there is a bug there. I haven't tested that since we've rolled onto this new version. So maybe nobody's been using it, so nobody's reported it. So I'll go ahead and check into that. So let's go back to the area that we were at, IT administration, general again, change log setup, tables. Okay, and let's just actually focus on vendor. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Let's see if it just removes. No. Yeah, I think what's happening, Dan, is that there's some code that needs to be changed that is going to update it. I think there's a virtual table, and I don't think it's being written out in the reality of it. So I have to change that. All right, so log insertions. Let's just kind of go see how this works. So you have both a 3 dots and you have a drop down. Let me kind of expand this, make it a little bit easier to see. Okay, the drop down allows you to pick blank. Don't monitor that action, log insertion. Do not track it. Some fields, all fields. When you click on some fields, let's just take the item as an example. So the item, I just changed that to all fields, by the way. If I change this to, let's say, some fields, then you click on the 3 dots, and you tell the system which fields are you logging insertion for. So the answer might be, okay, if I'm logging insertions, quite honestly, I don't even think the name is going to be there. I'll go ahead and just say number and description, I guess. This is an item table. So those are my some fields. Here I typically would pick all fields pretty much on the modify. And here I may say go ahead and do some fields, and I may pick again just those same 2. You can see I can put them side by side to show you which ones you picked on the insertion side. So if I were to close right now the screen, again, let's just make sure that took. Okay, there it is. All right, but again, this is not taking. That's what the problem is. Yeah, it's not taking. So I can't make any change. It's just can't get into that other subtable. So if I go here, let's just go ahead and at the department, let's just go ahead and try to change an item. I just don't know this. I'm just experimenting with whether if I put an item right now, will it go ahead and record a change log entry. So I'm going to go ahead and call it 100, and I'm going to call it test item. Okay, and I'm going to hit OK. And I just don't know, quite honestly, of changelog entries. Changelog entries is not on every screen. So we put them on a lot of screens, but some screens we haven't. So the question is, well, then how do you get to them? Okay, and I'm going to help you with that in a second. But let's go ahead and first just remind myself what is the table ID. I'm going to write that down. It's 27. Okay, 27 is the table ID because we're going to need to know that. And is changelog entries on here? See, it's not even on here. Okay, so now the question is, well, how do I even see if it even possibly worked? And that's where the other screen comes into play, and that's why I did that on purpose. So if I go to IT administration, back to general, that's what the changelog is. This is in its raw sense, the changelog entry. The entry number is, I'm not sure where it is, but I believe that entry number is right there. Yeah, you can add it. I would kind of suggest adding it. Okay, because it's actually physically going in order. So actually you can see it did kick in. Okay, and there it is right there. There's the date and time. There's the user. And just so you know, the only thing it tracked on the insertion was the number. I could have said all fields, and it may have put in more. Let's just experiment with that a little bit so you guys can see the effect of all fields on the insertion. I think that'll help. So if I go back to general, changelog, so it looks like it's immediately taking effect. That's different than the older version of the system, which is actually good. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to all fields. Yes, I want to do that really. Hit OK. I'm just going to go back, make sure that's saved. Yeah, it's saved really nicely. Okay, I'm going to put a new item in. All right, so we're going to go inventory, items, new, 1001, whatever. Just make up a number. I click on here. Another test item. Okay, we'll hit OK. We're going to go now to departments, IT administration, general, and changelog. Click this on the other way. Okay, there's my new item. So it does, as you can see on the insertion, I still got the same result. So I just want to show you that really in that example, the only field that can be tracked, because basically the insertion's happening as soon as I put the number in and I cursor, you know that there's sort of like a hesitation. That's because that's the insertion. So it's really, insertion's not that exciting, I guess I'm trying to say. We do know who it is. We know what number it is. It's all we really can glean from this is that this person created that number. But generally speaking, that's why we do on the modification all fields. On the deletion, kind of the same thing. Now, if I do track all fields, will it record all fields as it does the deletion. I'm not even sure about that, so let's test that scenario. So let's go to change log. Let's go back to the tables. Let's switch this to all fields. Okay, perfect. We're going to go back to our item. We're going to go ahead and delete it. This is deleting 1,000. Okay, I'm going to go back to the change log. We're going to go and flip this again. Okay, and there you go. So you can see that actually all it recorded anyway, even though I had all fields on, was just that one value. And again, I'm not 100% positive because maybe I do have to exit in some ways. Maybe that's part of it, so I am going to just exit just to do one more test and delete that other item because I kind of want to leave that one, get rid of that one anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and get out and get in. I'm going to delete that other item and see if I get the same result. And that would kind of prove to us, if I do get the same result, that it really makes no difference to track all fields on a deletion because it doesn't buy you anything. Could be wrong, though. Okay, so we'll go ahead and delete this item now. Okay. Change log. Change log. All right. Ah, well, no, I'm wrong. Look at that. Look on the flushing method. You see all those records? So those are all related to that deletion transaction. But again, you have to make that decision then. If you pick all fields on the deletion, what in essence is recording what the value was in all those fields at the time of the deletion. If you go to old value, new value, the new value is all blank because it's a deletion. It's just telling you what the old values were. So that's something that you need to think about when you're designing this and using changelog setup. Ask the client, do you want to track all the data in the record once the deletion occurs? And sometimes that may be the case. So that kind of gives you some sense on how to set it up and how to work it. I'm going to look at that bug and see what the problem is and fix that. But one thing go ahead.
You want to be, Andrew, just correct me if I'm wrong, but you want to be careful with the changelog too, because it can slow the system down if you turn too many things on.
Well, in the earlier part, I don't know if you had joined yet. Did you hear? I said I really recommend not setting up changelog for transactions. So an example of tables that I would stay away from would be, for instance, these two tables here. Because that's all your purchase order, purchase line, payroll journal line. Let's kind of go down to the payroll area. Let me kind of scroll down here really far now. All right, so let's just kind of go down to it.
But that would be true. You like say you don't want to turn on transactions, things like that, because you start creating a huge log file. It affects your performance and your backups become.
Well, I'm going to talk about that as well. I'm going to talk about managing it. So these are some key tables here. These are key tables right there: requisition header, requisition line, history. Like these 4 tables, I wouldn't touch. There's comment lines I wouldn't touch. Workflow routing header, yeah. This is all your routes. So again, somebody switching a route, sometimes it's nice to know who did that. Approval processing line, no, it's already kind of by definition audited in the sense of it's based on who it's for, it's based on action. So some of this stuff you have to learn more about our system over time to help, and we can help guide you on that. Let's just see where payroll is. Here's where payroll starts. So payroll is starting in the 3703 2300. Starting in this ID here, you start getting some pretty good stuff. This payroll ledger entry is set to all fields. What that really means is there's not really a modification occurring except just possibly a couple fields are editable after the fact. After you've posted, a few fields can be edited, and so we're tracking who did that. And so that's probably okay. So it doesn't mean that it's going to create a bazillion of entries. One thing to note is that when we write code, we can write code to create changelog entries or not, but they don't just happen naturally. So what I mean by that is if we write a batch report to mass update something, we may or may not have included updating the changelog if the changelog is even being managed for that particular table. So I just want to let you know that, because we have routines that mass unblock and block the employee payroll control. And I believe in that code it does record changelog entries if the setup is on. And you can see right there, that table is on right there. So we've been respectful for that. If you find out that a batch process does not create changelog entries, yet the actual table is being monitored in changelog, let us know. I mean, we'll go ahead and write a work order real quickly and update that batch process to create the changelog entries. It's something that we have to positively write code to do. The only time that changelog, if we don't write code to do it, it's going to kick in is when you're just in the interface. Users are doing natural stuff in the interface. So these are key payroll tables. If you go down to the 3708 5500 range, you begin to get into all of K-12. So let me just kind of, as you can see, there's a lot of tables in this system. Nope, we're still not there. That's an award vision. All right. A lot of tables, too many. Okay, so starting here is where, so there's the employee job table, critical table. I would turn on this table too, quite honestly. That's your master table for your payroll jobs. I would absolutely turn that one on. And so that's something else that, we could do is have just a session to kind of go through which are the tables that we should at least be thinking about. We could maybe produce a spreadsheet. Maybe, Dan, it's something you could do, or somebody could do that, and maybe we could just take the object designer, put them all in Excel, and kind of just go through which ones are the ones, that are key tables, if you will. It's not that many. I mean, it's probably 30 tables that are really key. Even though we've got 3,000 tables here, probably at the end of the day, there's 30 tables that really count. So anyway, I just want you to know that. Okay, so one thing about the changelog is you got to be careful a little bit here because it's a massive table, and so as you filter, it may act funky, so maybe you're just sluggish. One thing to note, though, is if you really are, because I just said to you, let's go by entry number and go to the last one. Well, that obviously doesn't work if you're trying to research a problem. And let's say you can't get to the changelog entries from the place, like the item card or something, and you have to come here. Or let's just say you want to go and look at all people that have changed a particular field over the last month or something. How do you do that? My recommendation is before you do that is know your table ID. And before that, click on this so you're in that table ID order, and then switch over here and put 5200 or whatever table you're interested in. And the system will respond pretty quickly because you've put it in table number order and you've filtered on that. So it should be pretty quick. At that point, I'd open up my advanced filter. And let's say you're interested in tracking email addresses. I'm just using that as an example. Again, it's a little bit faster if you do the field ID. And I don't know if the field ID is on here. No, that's a bummer. Let me just choose columns. Field number. All right, there it is. Field caption. Okay. The field ID is 15. That's better. It's more efficient. You can do it by the field caption, but that's just a lookup flow field from another table. This is the real value that's in the record. My recommendation is if you're saying I want to see all the emails that were changed for a period of time, I would do it that way and go field 15. Okay. Okay. So now I say, well, I want it based on dates. So I want to go in here and say, give me based on date and time from, I don't know what my dates are here. Let's just say 10:01 to 10:31. Okay. So again, you're just seeing examples. We can see that this person is changing every single one. So, but again, Perkins, you guys already know who this is probably, right? And so you're not surprised by that information. But that's obviously the kind of stuff you can query it. But my recommendation is when you're doing this type of querying online that you think about putting it in table ID order, using the table number, and if you want to do by field, you can do by field, but use the field number. The more you do descriptively by table captions and field captions, it'll be sluggish because these are not real fields in this record. They're just looked up dynamically as the screen is opening. So yes, it can filter on it, but it will be more sluggish. And this table can get large, which gets me to two other issues. One is that there's a report, I believe, that you can print to print this data, and secondly is grooming this data. So let's talk about first the report and see if there is a report, or I just make that up. Let's see. Let's just type in change. Whoops. Sorry. I thought there was a report. Change log. No, that's the screen, right? No, that's the setup list. Yeah, I don't see a report. Do you? I thought there was a report.
No, not.
Yeah, I think what people have always done is they've copied this to Excel. They filter for whatever they want. But keep in mind, in the key places that we care about, and let's just kind of switch over to payroll for a second now. So if I'm in payroll and I'm tracking the other auth info, you can even have navigate here, change log entries. So we have put it all over the place. Now this one's probably not being monitored, but it is really kind of built for you to do this automatically. And you can see the filter it's being sent. Okay, so it's kind of doing that automatically.
Break the filter on, I was going to say break the employee number filter. See
what you got it. Hold on.
Happens.
Yes, there is some data being tracked. Yeah, you definitely got it on for.
It may just be modifications and not insertions.
Yeah. Well, and maybe that data came in through the rapid start, and this is data that's been changed since then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's probably right. So that's kind of how that works. In terms of grooming the data, Dan brought that up. This data can get out of hand. This is the most records in a table, dynamically growing faster than Superman jumps a building. It's really fast. And it can be overwhelming. And it's really not great because when we are backing up your system to move it into your test environment or move it down to our development system, it just makes it much more difficult. We highly recommend that, and again, this is something that I'll say to Bill as well, is that, we really should think about maybe on our end just running SQL scripts to kill the data out that's of a certain age on a prescribed basis. Certainly in the cloud, Bill, it would make sense, and I've already brought that up with Ben already, that we don't even allow a client to maintain more than X months of changelog data. So if it's 6 months old, if it's older than 6 months, it's gone. We're constantly running a process every either night or month or whatever it is to kill anything older than 6 months. That's what I would do. I would just make that as a standard course for allowing this stuff to be in the cloud. I would do the same thing if I was Trecca. So I think you guys should either write a SQL script or run this process, or we could build onto a timer running this process. And the process is located right here, and I kind of alluded to it already. Data deletion, okay? And the very end of this, delete entries, there's a thing called delete changelog entries, which you kind of saw that when I scrolled. And you would say, 1231 13. Now, I probably won't have any entries to delete at that point. But you just run that, whatever. Actually, I don't know what that message said. I should actually have read that message. Oh, I just deleted some records. Thank God I'm not in production. Let's go ahead and do that again. Oh. Maybe that message would come up. Let me go ahead and do this to .013114. Your date filter allows deletion of entries that are less than 1 year old. Do you want to continue? Okay, fine. I don't care what the data retention policy is. It's not my job to decide that. But my job is to tell you that you really do need to groom this, because this is the major thing that people don't ever think about. These entries become less interesting. Every single month you go past it, it's less interesting. Are you really going to be interested in seeing if somebody changed a master record that's 8 months ago? Really? Typically when we have problems, they're problems that occurred within the last week, 2 weeks, sometimes 3. I've never seen anything beyond that. So 6 months old, I just can't understand why the changelog entries are interesting. They're really not only are they not interesting, but they're problematic, leaving them junked out there forever. And this system can create just millions of it. We've seen databases with 10 million changelog entries, literally 10 million. So I'll go ahead and do some more deletions. So it'll come back and tell you how many are deleted. But you guys could write a SQL script. You guys, it could be done by us, and we can give you the SQL script to run on the Trecca databases. And it's really prod, because quite honestly, we create tests from prod. So as soon as you blow them out on prod and back up prod to test, it makes tests better. And so, I really think that's something that's from just a data management perspective you guys should focus on, or at least put a plan together. So that's changelog. The big thing that didn't work was we're having a problem on the specialized K-12 fields being written back to the real table that stores them. I'll fix that probably today in a work order, so I'll have to get a work order for that. And I don't know, Bill, maybe you can get a work order for me on that, because I'm sure I have to fix that. But anyway, in terms of changelog, are there any questions from the crew on this call? Anybody want to talk more about changelog, or should I move to payroll control schedules? All right. Anybody? Nobody?
Yeah, if there was a spreadsheet like of one that's set up for a district that works like really well, and just a copy of that, like of what was confirmed and what was some and what was all, I mean, that would be nice, because that's somebody that is, helping with implementation can just go down through and do in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, so you're saying show me a spreadsheet of the tables that are kind of the key tables that are in use, not transactional tables, but kind of master file tables that are in use in the system?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. No, I think that would be a nice thing to have as well. I'm not sure. I guess maybe either Bill or Chris, maybe can you guys help out with that?
Yeah, or I could maybe put together one, and we can see what we can pass it around and see if everybody has any additions to it.
Okay, so you want to start it off and then send it to Bill, Chris, and I, and we'll kind of comment. Melissa, too. I think she probably would see that you might have missed a few. But one thing that maybe Ben can give you is, which tables have, in any one of these production databases, I guess, which the problem is that not every database uses all the tables. Like, a good example is just in Perkins right now. We walked into it and saw that inventory is not being used and fixed assets is not being used.
Right.
So, we just have to try to get a comprehensive list that may not be applicable for everybody. And it doesn't matter, by the way. I just want to make this argument that if you turn changelog on a table that's not in use, it doesn't cause any problems. So I'd rather be on the conservative side, have them on, than not have them on. So if they then begin to start using fixed assets, we know that changelog setup is done. It's operational, right?
Yep, a guideline, that'd be great.
Yeah. So Dan will start it, and then we'll work it internally. And I think it's an area that we need to also do in North Carolina as well, just so we have consistency there. So that's changelog in a nutshell. It's an interesting process, an important process, and sometimes we just go and we go live and we forget to kind of check it all. And then invariably support kind of just like bangs their head against the wall, because gosh darn, if I'd had that managed on that table, you'd be able to sort of solve this issue, prove, because the reality of changelog is that the problems you're going to have with the users are going to be in the first 3 months. And the problem is that changelog is usually done and fixed when we discover that, we wish we had that, right? And so if we could do it on the day one, then I think in that 3 months, when you're going to get the funny stuff, the funny keystrokes that don't make any sense, you would have a better chance of having a little bit better of a training tool. And I see it as a training tool, quite honestly. Okay, so let's switch over to payroll. And, we talked about, Heidi, you talked about doing reporting today on payroll. Do you want to, I'm thinking of the payroll control schedules. Are you guys work with them already? Is that something new to you? Somebody else set them up, like Dan has set them up?
Dan set them up, of course, it's kind of implementation. I think
we're getting a lot of background noise right now. I don't know who's, maybe Dan, maybe you could mute yourself for a second. Dan, is that you?
Yeah, maybe.
Can you mute yourself for a second?
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll mute you. Can we mute you?
And you too.
All right, I'll do it. There we go. Heidi, you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I could not hear myself think.
That's
go ahead.
When you're talking about that, if you open a pay control, since you're controlling the screen there.
Okay, payroll controls, you mean?
Is that where you were? Is that
no,
what you were aiming at?
I was aiming at this thing called payroll control schedule. Like in Perkins, in Perkins, these guys have been set up. The question is, how do you set them up? And then, of course, how do you run them? You probably know how to run them already, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
But the question is, how do you set them up in the first place? And I was going to go through that and spend a few minutes doing that.
That'd be fantastic.
Okay. All right. So let's first define what this is in the sense that a payroll control schedule, you can have, it's sort of like batches, or I see it more like the account schedules and column layouts, which I don't think we've done a lot of training on, but that's another area that I think we could do quite a bit of training on. So in account schedules, when you're doing that in the financial side, you're basically creating the rows in the financial statement. Well, here it's different in the sense that the system already knows what the rows are. The rows are employees. And so really what the control schedule really is all about is what your columns are. So it's actually akin to your column layouts over on the financial side is what payroll control schedules are in the payroll side. You're defining a report where you want the columns to be in a certain order, you want the math to work a certain way, and so that presents the columns to the report. The rows are the employees, and primarily you put a date filter in. So you run it for a month, 2 months, a quarter, and so forth. So that's really really the purpose of this. And so we really have to just know primarily how to get each row in this data set here, which translates to columns on the report, set up. So to go ahead and do it again, just to confirm, we go ahead and go to the payroll control schedule. Now you can print from here. The downside of printing from here is that it only prints the portrait version of the control schedule, and there are 2 versions. And if I kind of go a little bit further down, you can see them right here. Payroll schedule, that's the portrait version. Payroll schedule landscape. And I don't know the columns, I don't remember, but I want to say that the portrait is limited to 6 columns. It's not literally 6 because there's places when you run the report to say, do I include the social number or not, and so forth. So I think as you ask for less information that defines the employee, you get a column or 2 back. So I think the number of columns in the portrait mode is a little bit more dynamic depending on how you then run it, and you have to practice that a little bit. And then the landscape version obviously gives you more columns. The downside of this tool is that there's no overview, so if you decide you wanted like 30 columns, you're just not going to get anything because it's going to just go off the screen, and you're not going to see it. And so even if you send it to Excel or PDF, I don't think it'll make a difference. So you are limited in terms of the number of columns. I'm not sure the total limit. So when we click this button, you get basically the last one that the system is defaulting to where I went. So if I was in this one and I clicked on this one and closed it, I think it would just come back to that one, right? So it's just bringing me up to the control schedule that I was at last time. And so let's go ahead and know first how to create a new one. And I'll just do a couple little things, real simple one. But then I think what we'll do is we'll then come back to the ones that Dan has set up and try to translate them to ourselves in terms of how he set them up. So the first thing to set one up is you just click on this button here and you hit New. And I will call this Treka Test. Okay, and I'll call this Treka Test. Okay. All right, as you click on it, and you click one more time on the column headers, you're now on there on the first row. I've found sometimes that a blank row gets created, so I sometimes just delete that just to make sure I'm starting from the blank, but I think it seemed fine. So, okay, at this point, I can go ahead and create my columns. So my first column, and the reason I'm putting column numbers in there is only because I might be doing math. And so when I do math, I have to refer in the mathematical formula to the column numbers or the values I put in there for the formula. It's the only reason that they're relevant. They're relevant to you internally as the designer of this. It does not have any relevancy to the end result. I'll go ahead and just say gross earnings. Okay. So the first column that we come to, or the first field that we come to after putting that in, the choice is formula, payroll amount, and taxable amount. So a formula would be a mathematical formula, and generally going to be later in this process when we're actually maybe adding or subtracting information that is already presented to us. So we'll kind of play with that a little bit. Payroll amount. So payroll amount is, if you think about a payroll journal and you're processing payroll amount is the field that you see that is the gross amount, it's the withholdings, it's the net pay, it's the expenses. The taxable amount is usually the basis in which the thing was derived. So in the FIT, taxable amount is going to be the basis that the FIT was computed on. So it's FIT, it's federal income tax earnings. I guess it's box 1 on the W-2, if you will. State taxable amount for the state withholding. Well, that's going to be the state taxable earnings, and so forth and so on. So where we care about taxable amount probably would be maybe in the retirement area, certainly in FICA, Medicare, federal and state withholding. Those are the places taxable amount become interesting to us. Payroll amount is the amount itself. So I'll pick payroll amount here. Okay, formula is not relevant at this point because it only relates to it if this type was formula. Okay, show opposite sign. So show opposite sign is important if you want to show the value as a positive number, even though it's stored physically in the record as a negative. The negatives are all the deductions, the net pay, and the expenses. So pretty much everything's negative, and the positives are the earnings. So generally, you don't want to flip the sign on earnings, so I won't do that here. But you generally do want to click that when it's something different than earnings. Okay, so now you have different ways to express to the system what exactly you want. And the fields you can pick from is the payroll control filter, which is actually a filter of the codes themselves. We'll talk about this in a second. Let me see if there's any columns are missing, by the way. Oh yeah, look at that. Yeah, you have a lot of things missing. Yeah, let me, employer number filter you won't apply because we don't use multiple employers. That's if you're a service bureau. Comparison period formula, I'll put that out there. I'll put the GL count out there. Locality filter, I doubt you're going to apply that. Object, I'm not sure what object is, actually, quite honestly. Special cost center. Are those your dimensions, I guess, right? Yeah, I'm not sure where those get used. Tax form filter could be interesting, actually. Work type filter, probably not as interesting. Work type filter could be interesting if you wanted to track some kind of custom tracking system. That possibly could be interesting. All right, so we'll just kind of go through this a little bit. Payroll control is going to look up in the payroll control codes. So I would just maybe, let's say I wanted to be earnings. Let's just go to an earnings one since we're talking about earnings. And I just wanted earn cont sal. So if I clicked on here, then it's limited at that point to earn cont sal. So if I went further to the type filter and picked income tax, I would get 0 data because I basically created an impossible filter. I said it's income tax and it's earned cont sal. So the system is limiting to income tax, and now it's looking for an income tax called earned cont sal. There's not going to be any, so you're going to get nothing. So I just want you to understand that you've got to put in, if you're using multiple columns here, you really got to get very explicit to get it correct. Okay, so I'll go ahead and blank that out. And I'll click on this. And what I can do is I can pick, I'm getting calls from McSpeed. All right, sorry about that, guys. Okay, I'm going to get rid of, whoops, I'm trying to get rid of this. I'm going to show you, I want to show you how that works. So it's right now it's blank. I click on earnings. Let's say I want earnings and bonus. That's what I'm trying to do, which I know is a 2 pipe 3. We did that before. If you remember, we had that whole discussion when we set up the base amounts on our previous sessions. This is a very similar screen. So if I click in here, it pops up because it sees the values there already. It's helping me construct possibly the filter. In this case, I want or bonus. So it helped me to create. I could, of course, just typed in 2 pipe 3 and it would have worked. Earnings and bonus. So really, gross earnings is earnings and bonus. I'm keeping it very generic. I'm not putting in name filter, a reporting authority type filter, a work reporting authority code, employer number filter. This comparison I'm not putting in. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Here, you can pick post-expense in cash, post-liability in cash, post-expense in liability. This could actually be interesting because you may just want to just have, this deductions, as an example. So I think what we'll do is we'll maybe do it a simple example like that, but I'll include that a little bit later. Tax form filters. Oh, I don't have a lookup there, do I? Oh, no, I do. Sorry. Huh. So that would allow us to actually filter on certain information that's connected to the W-2. So it'd be a way to kind of test the W-2. You can always do a W-2 proofing type of report as well. These last 2 fields, which I didn't really get into tremendously, is a little complicated. But in theory, you could go ahead and do minus 1Q, I suspect, and actually generate, let's say, gross earnings and show it as quarter buckets. I could say minus 3 quarters, minus 2 quarters, minus 1 quarter, and then I would set my date filter for a quarter. And so I could have quarterly amounts of whatever thing I'm trying to do. So the examples I want to see, I want to see taxes in the 4 quarters, whatever. You have that ability with this as well. I haven't used it all that much. Yeah, hold on, guys. I'm getting something wrong with our hosting system because I'm getting calls by people. Hold on. Be right back. Yes. I know something's wrong. I'm doing a training right now for a ton of people. What's going on? Is it? I don't know why you're not. Yeah. April can do that. Let me just give it. I'm gonna give a sec. Yeah. Hold on. Let me just see. April, take this cell phone. John's trying to get into the data center. He can't because the Expedia won't let him. He needs to get you to authorize them to do that. He needs to get into Expedia. Sorry, guys. We had a little bit of a data center issue. Are you there? Everybody there? Everybody's muted, so nobody's talking, but that's okay. I'm back in my office. Sorry. Okay. So I'm not going to do this in this example, but I just want you to know that it had that capability. Okay. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and add another one. I'm going to call it just real simple. I'm just going to call it deductions. Really simple. Payroll amount again. I'm going to come over here, and this time I am going to use that GL posting filter. Why not? So that would be liability and cash. Okay, so I've done that. And I'm going to go net pay. Instead of actually computing net pay, I'm going to do a formula of 10, and I'm not sure if I need to do plus 20 or not. I'm going to go 10 ... 20, but I am going to reverse the sign on this. Okay, so this is a negative naturally. This is a positive, so my sense is it should add up. And the last one I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do net pay again. I'm going to go ahead and do payroll amount, and I am going to go into the type filter and pick net pay. And I think I'll change this one to say computed. Whoops, sorry, wrong button. Or something like that. Calced. Andrew, come on, man. Okay, good. All right. So in theory, I expect it to do earnings, deductions, net pay, and then this is a net pay. And I could, of course, do another formula, but I'm not going to bother right now. I think it's going to be hopefully working every time. I'm going to go ahead and just print right here. So I can prove these pretty quickly. So I can go print. Okay, so when you print the schedule, you can go ahead and sort it different ways. We kind of already know how that works probably. You can decide how you want to do the name, what you want to do with negative amounts, mask all digits, with the social number, and so forth and so on. I'm going to do a date filter of 0901, 0930, and I'm going to say preview. I could have force filter for employees as well. Let's see if I get any data. Hopefully I do. All right, I'm going to go ahead and switch this to 150. All right, well, something doesn't look right. Okay, so I think that's absolutely incorrect information. Net pay, I think that last column looks reasonable to me, but it looks like I have the deductions wrong, and certainly the math is wrong because it is taking the numbers. Well, no, I think it's just the deductions are wrong. Yeah, deductions just seem wrong. And net pay, I need to reverse the sign. Okay, so definitely has some problems. Definitely going to go ahead and do that at least. And actually, my net pay is misspelled. And let's just make sure that fixed real quick. Oh, yeah. So one thing is it's annoying with this. It doesn't remember your date filter. So 0901, ... 0930. And I'm going to go ahead and just do a Control C on that. So maybe I won't have to do it. What did it say?
It's 0930, not 0931.
Oh, I'm glad somebody's watching. you're not sleeping. All right, so that looks good. Sign's wrong, but I got the deductions not right. So deduction, what did I do? I went down here, show opposite sign. 2. Let me just delete it again. Maybe it should be liability and cash, right? Liability and cash. Interesting. I have a sense that particular. It's interesting that remember that wasn't on the screen naturally. I put it on the screen.
You may have to use the type filter, not the.
Oh, I think I absolutely have to use the type filter. I'm just kind of. It's interesting to me that. Oh, it's great when you actually copy the wrong value.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely wrong. All right, I agree with you. We're going to go ahead and say that GL is just not working right. What's interesting, though, Dan, about it is that it actually is picking earnings again. You know, why didn't it pick, if it's not working at all, you would have thought that it probably would have picked.
Well, GL post type is 2. That's earnings.
Well, I think, but again, the lookup, if you look at that, this is 0, 1, and 2. This is a different.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It should have been post liability in cash. So that's odd. I'm just going to go ahead and do what Dan suggested, which is I'm going to come into the type filter, and I'll pick, now I have to pick income tax. We're going to have to click this a few times. Unemployment. No, not unemployment. Well, theoretically, this is where it gets kind of complicated because I'll pick other tax. Yeah, this is going to be a problem itself. Pre-tax deductions and post-tax deductions. And I'm sure this is not going to work as well, and I'll tell you why. I think we'll see, because it's going to pick up the employee. Oh, gosh, darn it. Okay. So you see the slight differences there? It's because the deductions is picking up the employer amounts as well. So because the way I filtered that, the actual other tax and unemployment in theory, I guess, but it's really the other tax, income tax, other tax, is picking up the ER matches.
Well, now can you add the other filter on the GL post type and exclude those?
Let's do it. I mean, I was with you on that. I just don't trust it, but maybe you're right. I'm going to get this wrong every single time. I fall for that every single time. Dadgummit. It's working. Man, you are good at this stuff. I just don't know why.
You could actually put a difference column out there.
Absolutely.
And then you'd automatically see your difference really quick if you did have a difference.
So difference would be
30 minus 40.
Yep.
Something like that.
And hey, look, No, I don't think so. It's
30 plus. One's got a. Even if you show the sign reversed, a lot of times it wants to do the math based on the sign that's showing, not the sign that it actually is.
Right. And so you want to go to the very end. In the very end, you see nothing there. So that would give me pretty much comfort feeling to go ahead and delete the column at that point, because at that point I've proved that the logic is solid. Now again, I don't know why we did this report. I mean, it was just a report, but that's kind of a good use, if you will. Let's kind of flip over now and look at Dan's reports. Let's see his dental insurance report. So dental insurance, he called it Board Dental. And he said AC Dental asterisk. So in his case, he's purposely saying, well, the first X characters is AC Dental. If there's anything after that, it'll just pick it all up. Let's see if he has any other filters. No other filters. Okay, good. Then on the employee dental, he's going PT and AT dental. He knows, again, that that's the case. Now, one thing I will caution you guys about in these designs is as soon as you start using payroll control codes as filters, and or as name filters, either one of these columns, If for some reason later on you go over to that payroll control and rename that control, obviously not obviously, I'm telling you, it's not going to fix this. This is like hard-coded filter kind of. It's just like it is what's here, and it's not going to change. There's no kind of magic where it's going to know to go fix these control schedules. And that applies to the account schedules, column layouts, everywhere in the system. And it applies to base amounts, brackets. I mean, all that stuff really doesn't have any ability to automatically fix themselves when this stuff changes. It does know that you've done this. In other words, it sees that PT Dental is there, and it does warn you. It says, are you sure you really want to do this? Keep in mind you might have to update these things, brackets, control schedules, etc. And you then hopefully will take heed to that and go ahead and fix that. So I just want to make that point. So that's the downside of doing that, but again, we don't change these very often. His formula here, he's flipping the signs, and he's doing a formula there. He's adding it up. Well, that's another way to do it, I guess, Dan, too, is you're adding two negatives, you're getting a negative, and then you're flipping its sign. So let's just go ahead and print this one now and see how it looks. And by the way, if an employee doesn't have any dental at all, they won't show up. You're not going to get all 0 employees showing up, which is nice in the way this tool works. Okay. And so the report, by the way, says dental insurance. I didn't show you that. Name of the company, period that you ran. This is who ran it, date and time. And the order is kind of the design on how you do this. So if I go print, and I do want to show it for the last 4, and I want to go ahead and do last name first, which I kind of prefer. Oh, I got to put that date range in. There you go. Yeah, I don't know. The date range is interesting. I don't know. There's no ability to put the date range in right here. But let me just kind of go off to this screen here and go to the payroll schedule here. And when I get this screen, this is the report, but it's not being sent from the place I was at. So here, if I leave this blank, it's going to run this. If I put the dates in, it's going to run this. It's going to run every report. Actually, let's just do that. And it should run every single report. So it's going to take a lot longer. And it should cut to a new page for each report, so which is kind of nice, because if you have 7 reports, you want to run them for the month or whatever, it'll run all of them. So you can see the number of pages here. So if I go, dental insurance should stop, federal tax liabilities. Now again, that means that they all have to be portrait also. That's pretty unusual. Typically what most people do is they come in here and they're just intending to run this for one report at a time, so they need to put that in, put then a date range, and then run it. And you can see last name, first name now, right. And of course the report does have totals. In terms of Excel, when we save that to Excel, I'm going to go ahead and just print that on my desktop. And I'm going to go to my desktop now. Oh, close, please. So, I mean, it's pretty good. I mean, it's not that the formulas, it's not like these are formulas. These are just values. But for the most part, it's in separate columns. I mean, the formatting, you could argue, is a little bit weird, freezes the panes, but I think it's pretty good. I mean, I think it's definitely decent enough to be a rendered an Excel version. So that's why we don't have any specific Excel output on this, because it kind of just does it naturally. Okay. Payroll landscapes, again, it just runs at landscape. Simple as that. Again, let's see if we can look at a couple others, see if we get some more concepts. Fed tax. All right, so this one certainly looks like it's landscape. And by the way, I didn't talk about this show. So you see here, actually, Mr. Clower is doing an excellent version of not showing, because what he's really trying to do is just add EE and ER together. And he could have probably done it on one line with payroll amount and just done SSEE pipe SSER. But for some reason, he's chosen to do 2 separate lines and then do a formula. And that seems reasonable, particularly when you get to the pickup. But you're not showing pickup, it looks like. Yeah, and these choices, by the way, always and never is generally what we pick. I really have never really worked with win positive and win negative. Of course you could. I just don't know why that would be interesting. Haven't quite figured out the example for that. But
part of this is I was trying to keep it portrait, but and so that's the reason for not showing some of those other columns, but then just trying to, compare, what's going on so we could do some troubleshooting, probably in this case.
Well, I mean, again, you can flip these right back to always, and then print them landscape and just kind of see what's going on, and then just shut them right back down. Yep. So this looks pretty straightforward. I mean, 200 ... through 300, 400 through 498. So he's kind of put a little bit of a buffer there. 500 through 598 makes sense. Now this plus, he probably could have also done maybe something different where he had pipes between that. 100 pipe 350, pipe 499. But I think this works fine too. I'm not sure if I'm right or wrong about that. I mean, there's different ways to express formulas. I know in the code it tries to tear apart that formula and try to understand what you're trying to say. So you can't get too fancy because it gets messed up. So you gotta, if you're doing pluses, you can't just start throwing pipes in. You gotta go one or the other because then the system kind of goes to different parts of the code and reads it and interprets it differently. Let's see. So let's see, got anything else here? No. So it's mainly just you're picking the type, you're limiting the type, and you're picking the code. And that's how you're managing the data. That's just really not a problem at all. Medicare difference, I'm not sure what you're doing here.
Here we were trying to make sure that what we're calculating for the employee portion and the employer portion is matching.
Oh, I see. So if there's a difference, that means I got a problem. So if I go print, again, I'm probably not going to get it to fit on the screen because, I mean, no, I guess he is because you're only showing 3 columns.
Right.
And so the question is, if you get a difference amount at the end of this report, which he is getting a difference amount of $1.66, the question is, why is he getting that $1.66? So I don't know if he's resolved that or not, or if that's still an issue, but somewhere this Suzanne Martin's got $1.66 hanging, which means that she's got, EE and pickup is different than, because ER should just match what this ends up being.
Right.
So why is that the case? And I don't know the case, but that's kind of why we do these things. I'm not going to answer that question. That would be a whole separate issue. Medical insurance, we already looked at that one, I think. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. It's like dental. Payroll transfer, gross pay, medical, ER. Payroll transfer, what is that for? Why
this is what they use. How much money do I need to transfer to my payroll checking account to cover payroll? I'm covering gross pay, I'm covering the employer part of Medicare, FICA, and retirement.
How about hospitalization? I don't see that in there. I would think that would have been there.
They're doing their they're paying the board side out of the general checking,
Gotcha.
So the employee side is covered out of gross.
Very good. Understand completely.
So
all right. And this is another one where it's total tax. So it's slightly like the other one, but
this would be kind of like checking what do I need to, 941 or what do I need to send to the IRS for my taxes for this payroll period or something like that. Gotcha. It's kind of another double check.
And what's nice is these also run very fast, which I've always found helpful.
It would be nice if they had the option to run in total only.
Yes, well, that would be something that we can happy to do that. That's a very simple change, just print totals only, and that's it. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. That'd be a very simple thing to do. So I would highly recommend that you maybe put that as a suggestion in the suggestion box. I didn't promise anything since I'm being recorded. Anyway, oops, I didn't mean to close that, sorry. All right, so which other ones? Truck attest and vision insurance, we already know what that's going to look like because you've been consistent. So again, the Trucka support team, you guys can create these for your clients, or even more importantly, you can teach your clients how to actually set these up and let them go to it. So you could put together your own sort of playground testing, understand it really well, and then begin to do training sessions on payroll control schedules. It's a very often we kind of do for them. We kind of fish for them. We don't teach them to fish. And I kind of feel like you need, particularly on the payroll departments that are a little bit with it, to give them the skills to basically set these themselves. And it's not that difficult, but it is a little bit different than what they're used to. They have to understand that type field, a couple things, but certainly you guys should be able to master it, but I think maybe, if they could have some of the clients master it. I don't know if you've had any luck, Dan, with any of the actual users at these districts in Ohio using this tool?
No, not really. Like you said, I've set a couple of these up. I think Yvonne at Perkins actually uses, the transfer schedule, the tax schedule. There's a couple of those she uses, but they're not trying to think about, oh, well, I've got a problem. How can I go find this data to figure it out? And I think the payroll control schedules are fairly straightforward and easy to work with. I mean, you've got a lot of flexibility with them to pull data, payroll data, and put it in some sort of a report format.
I used them a lot to do end of year W-2, to compare W-2 show, to show that their W-2 actually matches these fields. You'd have to break it up because of the amount of fields going across. But, I do like federal, and then I'll do deductions, and then I'll do, federal would be with the FICA, and then your state and locals, whatever. But it's a very good tool for that to use.
Yep. I switched you guys to my speakerphone because my headset was dying, so that's why I'm sounding a little bit different. Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, I think, the idea also of producing totals only could be good. It can go to Excel already. I guess, we could develop possibly, some overview capability, or maybe we would actually just add, if you guys said to me, just add a landscape legal version, payroll control schedule landscape legal as a third option there to allow going to even more columns. That can also be done pretty straightforward as well. And we could add that to the system so that if somebody really does need 16 columns in that example, that would be a good place to do that. So that's something else I would think, maybe a work order could be put together where we do at the same time print totals only and add payroll schedule landscape legal,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something else that we could add. So it's a real good system, and it is an area that people just often don't know about. And sometimes people say, "Well, don't you have a report writer in payroll?" And again, it doesn't do any grouping really that much. So that's the other side of it. It's not a grouping mechanism, but it is useful, I find. But anyway, so at this point, the two areas I wanted to cover in detail, I now completed, which is change log and everything about change log, and then payroll control schedules and both the setting them up and printing them, everything that I know at least about them. And Dan, obviously you've imparted some good principal information here, Chris, too. So I guess the question is, Trecca, anything else that you want to go through right now that we should talk about? Anything that's been bugging you? I think there's a couple areas that you also are interested in.
I think for today that's pretty good. Just a second. Do you guys have anything? No? Nope. I guess for today we're pretty good.
Okay, and we're still scheduled next week, I believe. It's our last week before I take a break from this series. So if you think of some content in the next couple of days, please let me know so I can update that invite.
Okay. I do believe that training's on Monday instead of Tuesday, correct?
Let me just take a look. That's a good question. I think that was already changed, but I just don't know. Yes, that's right. That's right, because I have to go to Niagara Falls. So that sounds good. So, yeah, just keep in mind if you want to change it. I'll go ahead and update the current sessions just so we have, on our records what we actually covered. So I'll go ahead and update that. And you guys have a nice day.
Great. Thank you kindly.
All right, no problem. Everybody take care. Bye.
All right.